And we'll just start with questions. If you have one, please raise your hand.
My question is for Mr. Clay. Obviously, with this film, you're working for a stand-up comedian or former stand-up comedian as the director. I'm wondering, as a performer, was there any part of the process where you intentionally tried to make him laugh? And did you find Woody Allen's weak spot?
On screen, I didn't try to make him laugh, obviously. It's not that kind of part. But, you know, we had a couple of, because we talked a lot about comedy one day and just how we both started in the different styles, which completely different sides of the world. But, yeah, it wasn't that much laughter on the set because it's, you know, pretty heavy subject matter.
And then one right here.
My question is for Cate. Since wardrobe is such a big part of a New York socialite's life, how much did yours influence your performance? I noticed the Chanel jacket was custom.
Yes, obviously Woody's films are made for $10.99, and so Susie Benzinger, the costume designer who's worked with Woody a lot, was extraordinarily inventive and called in a lot of favors. Chanel, Carolina Herrera, Oscar de la Renta. But it was great charting through Jasmine's recycling of her wardrobe and what she brought with her. You know, and so that how we could chart her unraveling and the change in her financial situation through that visual.
Did you get to keep any of it?
No, it all had to be returned at midnight.
We have a question right here and then one here.
Yeah, this question's for all three of you. How do you approach, in general, a project or a role, and then specifically this project?
I don't know about you guys, I don't have a particular process. I think that the material, the director, the other actors reveals what you need to do. And Woody was very much about it being alive. He wasn't interested in anyone's homework. But obviously, because there's no, as you were alluding to, the material is so dense. Like Sally and I, in particular, who I think were the only two people who got the full script, we talked a lot about the backstory and how that can inform the subtext. But it was a fascinating thing to play different aspects of Jasmine with different people. She was an entirely different person.
I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I'd only read my small part, which is completely isolated from the rest of the story. So I thought that, you know, Cate had kind of lost her mind. My job was to help her. And in terms of preparing for this role, I mean, there was very little preparation, partly because I knew so little. My wardrobe was a very significant thing because it was one of the few things that I had before I started, right? And I remember getting my wardrobe, which is all Ralph Lauren. My underwear is Ralph Lauren. My socks are Ralph Lauren. It is all Ralph Lauren, and which is like what my father wears. So I started feeling kind of uncomfortable in the fact that, you know, you have to wear that clothing in a certain way, which really reminded me of my father. And
you know, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really felt the same way with the clothing. It really puts you in the character you have to play because even as a stage performer, I mean, I have, you know, my garb, which is leather jackets and black jeans to make you feel a certain way. So the wardrobe is really important to feeling the character you're playing.
And also it really helped the chronology too. I mean, I think you can sort of look at it and think, oh, they're contemporary clothes, but Susie was really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Did either of you keep your wardrobe?
I didn't want my wardrobe. you know.
We have one right here.
The first thing I thought about was, you know, obviously there have been other women that have kind of been, you know, socialites and so forth, and they've kind of fallen on hard times. What was your research process into that? Or, you know, it seems like it's pretty common these days, people kind of fall in through the crevices.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who've fallen from grace. Yes, of course. I mean, that's part of my job and part of the pleasure of my job. But, you know, I thought about a lot of characters, both fictional and real. And then you have to play Woody's script because the characters are so beautifully, particularly drawn in the writing. I mean, that's where the majority of his directing happens, is in the script.
What about preparing to play someone who is suffering from mental illness? Did you do any special research for that?
Yes, obviously I'm not so method that I went and took Xanax every night, but it's amazing the things you find on YouTube. Yeah. So yes, I mean it was important for me to chart through when she'd taken a Xanax, how many she'd taken, if she'd mixed it with alcohol, and what the physical and mental effects would be. And also what I was trying to seed was just that sense that she was when she was beginning to have a panic attacks and when she might break out in a sweat, but yet everything else is completely fine. So her physical state and her psychological state they were kind of interesting balls to try and juggle.
Beverly.
Hi. So it's a two-part question. A, what in particular attracted you to the role, and how much direction did you get from Woody, character direction?
Well, when sure we're all the same. When you get Woody's call, you take it, and you've already said yes before you know what it is, and you just hope it's a good one. Which, of course, these films are never less than fascinating. But I was, I'd given up hope of ever working with him. I just thought he wasn't interested. And when the minute I read the script, it was fantastic. It's impeccably structured. It's absurd and tragic, often simultaneously. And I had heard that he was monosyllabic at best in relation to the direction that he gave actors. But I found if I asked him questions, he responded if he thought the questions were interesting. And if they didn't, he just waved me off and went back to his BlackBerry. But no, but he was great, and I think he despised and revered Jasmine, and I think he was fascinated by her. I mean, you think about all of those extraordinary creations, female creations, characters. He's drawn with such wonderful actresses. He's fascinated and loves women. Their exuberance and their intelligence, their fears, their phobias. And there's a great. I think there's a great line that he draws as a dramatist. So a lot of the directing was in the script, but he was very forthcoming. And I would say to him, "How would you do it, Mr. Allen?" I said, you should have played this role. And I said, well, did you consider playing this role? And he thought about it for a minute and a half, and he said, no, it would have been too comic. But I could have easily imagined, that's a movie I'd go and see.
You mentioned that every actor hopes to get the call from Woody Allen. For each of you, what was the situation? Was it a call from him, his casting director? And what was your reaction to being told, Woody Allen wants to meet you?
I thought it was a joke. Yeah, because I was just in New York performing, and my manager called me. And I said, all right, I got to pack. I'm coming home tomorrow. He goes, no, really. Woody Allen wants to meet with you tomorrow. So it was really, I got very excited about it, because... it's not like I've been banging out film after film lately. And so, just to walk in and meet him and say hello would have been great. But the fact, you're standing there and he's going, would you read some pages for me? And well, that's what I'm here for, right? And, the minute we went through, we just started talking about other things, and that was it. But it was thrilling. I mean, it's nothing less than thrilling to work with a guy like that.
Peter?
So my wife was very pregnant, and we're sort of waiting for the baby to come, and I got a call from my agent to come and meet him. I'd met him once before, years ago, on Everyone Says I Love You. So I knew what the meeting was going to be like. I knew it would be a little bit like an X-ray. And I walked in, and he was incredibly affable, actually, and he said, so we're doing this film this summer, and there was a part we thought you might be right for, and are you doing anything? And I said, I'm having a baby. And he said, well, are you doing anything else? And I said, no, and because I hadn't been planning on working. And he said, it's not going to take very much time, and we'll send the script over to your house. And it was, the pages actually were sent over to my house just for my character. And I actually had trouble concentrating on the pages as I was reading them, because I was like, of course I'm going to do this. What am I doing? There's a woman waiting to get this back. I should just give it back to her. She's been sitting there a while. And, I've just always wanted to be in a Woody Allen movie. And I've been a huge fan forever. I wanted to feel what it was like.
We have a question from Jared.
Cate, for you, how do you think she compares and ranks to his other wonderful female protagonists?
The tone of his films are often so different, but if you look at I feel privileged to be, playing the title role in a Woody Allen film. When you think about Annie Hall and everything Diane Weiss does, Judy Davis. They're brilliant. And Scarlett, Penelope. I mean, you know, they've all been part of collaborating to create fascinating, unique, shape-shifting, mind-bending characters. I mean, he's influenced the popular culture in ways that we can't even know. I mean, they're so deep.
Related to that, Kate, I suppose looking at those female characters, I was expecting Jasmine to emerge victorious and turn her life around. When you saw the script that you would be ending talking to yourself on a park bench, did that surprise you?
Yes, I found the whole story surprising and painful, and then not surprising at all, considering what's happening to a lot of people psychologically. I mean, and financially. I mean, you sit in a park and invariably you'll see someone mumbling to themselves, and sometimes they'll be very well healed. Like we were just in New York the other day, and I was walking along the street, and there was a woman who was incredibly well healed, who was babbling to herself. I think it's probably something that Woody sees quite a lot, living in the city. But yeah, I mean, it was. I thought, well, no, she's going to be in the Chanel jacket, and that with Susie and I'd worked out what the costume was, and Woody was happy with that, and I just said, well, let's just make something a bit off. So I said, what if I had a shower and just walked out of the house like that without any makeup, and which was probably a career killer, but there you have it. And so I just so that there's always something a bit off. I mean, when you're sitting next to someone who's mentally disturbed or in the middle of a breakdown, they can look, to all intents and purposes, completely well put together, but there's a vibration that comes off them. So, but I did find it surprising.
So that was your idea to, not blow dry your hair and to look completely collapsed?
Yeah, it just came out of a conversation. I'm not keeping a chit saying that was Woody's idea, that was my idea. I mean, it comes out of a conversation.
Each one of your characters is cripplingly flawed, but it is said so many times in these rooms that you have to find something about the character, no matter where they're at, something about them because you have to like them or like something about them to play them. So for each actor, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the really funny, about how you feel about your characters.
See, I disagree. I don't think you have to like them. I think it's not for me to like them or dislike them. I think that way lies sentimentality. And I'm not, particularly with a character like Jasmine, a lot of what she does is really unpalatable. But you hope that the audience will have a sense of understanding or see if you know why someone is doing what they're doing, why they're behaving why they're behaving the way they are, then that's your job to reveal that. And often that's situational. So someone is the storytelling does that, and then some of it's your job as an actor to kind of make that subtext come to life. So I think it's important to be compassionate, but you don't necessarily have to like or dislike them.
Okay, so maybe the word is compassionate. What did you find, each one of you find compassionate about your characters? I'm trying to find a story here where you describe these from...
I don't know, you're looking at the wrong person.
Did you relate to these characters?
Well, I did in a lot of ways, and I really love Woody's writing because he sort of sets me up, my character up, as like a really bad guy. Like you hear a line come out, like, I heard he used to hit his wife, and by the end of the movie, which I didn't even know because I never saw the script other than my lines, you realize this is really a good guy that just got destroyed by this woman and her husband. So it was real interesting to play that because even when I first met with Woody and I asked him, is there something you could give me? Because, he just gives you a couple pages and I'm like, but can you give me something to go on? And he goes, well, just look at it, he goes, he's drunk, he hits his wife. And that's not my character in the movie, but he sets it up through other characters and then by the end, you really feel for that guy because this was just a good guy in love with his wife, who his wife was really the drunk and bouncing from guy to guy. And so it's just the way he sets up how to get the compassion for these different characters. And what was great about Kate's character, I mean, every day when you drive around and you see, street bums and people babbling to themselves, I mean, we've all said it at one time or another. I mean, how did that person become like that? So to see the journey she takes through this movie is really interesting, because you do think of those things when you see somebody on a corner or walking down the street just talking to themselves, the people we all walk away from. And you go, how does that happen? You're born, you're a baby, you have a family, you grow up. Like, how does that happen? And, just, by her not having an identity of her own through this movie other than, the men she lives through, in their lives was driving her crazy. So it was interesting just to watch that process, even more than my own part. I really felt bad. I really felt bad for
I have
Peter.
so much compassion for his character. I mean, the only question I ever really asked Woody directly about my character was, I remember the day when I proposed marriage. I said, really? Like, to her? Why am I? No, but like, where is this coming from? And he said, you want a wife, And I went, right, okay, I want a wife. And I realized that, and now watching the film, I realized that the audience meets me, right? And people start rooting for her to be with me, knowing nothing about me except that I'm wealthy. I'm like a life raft. There's no like love thing that kicks off there. It's just, I wear clothes that look like I'm a wealthy. I actually have the quality of someone who's not only wealthy, but like very comfortable in it. And I'm ambitious. And so I figured, it made me play someone who was rather shallow, right? Somebody who would ask someone to marry them just because they look right. They look like a great person to stand next to you. They seem reasonable enough to get along with, like we get along well enough. And I like you. You're nice to talk to. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm ignoring. The real gist of what's going on with her is something that I, as an actor, kept going like, I must just have all of this very dominant flavor that's coming off of her of insanity that I'm just letting drift away and going, but once you take your pills, it's going to be great. So I do think as I watch the film, I not knowing the rest of the script, I do see the way that I kind of, create this expectation of, safe passage, and then we all realize, oh, what she needs is not actually money again. That's not really what's going to save her, a guy like this.
I kept wanting to yell at him, Google her. We have a question right here. And
First of all of you did an incredible job, especially you, Cate. If I had an Oscar now, I'd hand it to you. One of the great things about the character of Jasmine, I felt like I was watching Joanne Woodward in Three Faces of Eve. Very distinct personalities with each of the gentlemen that she's involved with. But one of the most telling is the vulnerability that comes out in the performance opposite Michael Stolberg's Dr. Flicker. How did you and Michael go about developing those scenes, which actually involves a little bit of physicality and a little bit of stunt work? And also, what is the most menial job that you've ever had to do?
We did it quickly. I mean, Woody's not renowned for his ability as a stuntman, so I mean, he just wanted it to work. But Michael was great, and I just said to him, I said, don't worry about being. Because sometimes you can, particularly when you have to work really quickly and you don't know one another well, there can be a politeness between you. I said, don't worry about being polite. It can make it as ugly and as awkward. So we worked it out with Will, who was the camera operator, and with Javier, who shot the film, and to how it could work. And then we showed it to Woody, and it. It's a horrible thing. I mean, I think in answer to your question too, I think she finds herself in some pretty horrendous situations. And yes, you can say she's placed herself there, but she's got no support structure and no agency, as you were referring to, and no allies and no sense of self. And so she's struggling for her own self-respect and identity. Most menial job that I've There was this fantastic television program on in Australia. I don't know if it came here, called The World's Worst Jobs. And what they would do is they would go to, started off, of course, cliche, went to a prostitute, and they'd follow her life for half an hour. And then at the end of the interview, they'd say, and what's the worst job that you can imagine? And then she would say, a garbage collector, and they'd follow a garbage collector's life. And at the end of the interview, they'd say, what's the worst job you ever did? And the final one they ended up with was maggot farmer. And that was really bad. But I've never been a maggot farmer, but I can imagine that was maggot farming. I mean, that's a job that actually exists, maggot farms.
In an industry that you work in where there's great wealth and status and success that happens, that can also be sort of yanked away suddenly.
It also could not exist.
Have you seen people struggling desperately to maintain what they have? Have you witnessed incidents of that firsthand when they feel it all slipping away, or it does all slip away?
I don't think it just happens in this profession. I think it's happening all over America, all over the world, that people's sense of self has been bound up, A, in a relationship, or B, in their financial status, their social circle. And when all of that's ripped away, I mean, they're the building blocks of our identity. And so you have to, often midlife, you have to look at yourself and say, who the hell am I? And if you don't have financial security and you don't have a support structure, then madness can pretty quickly set in. I mean, she doesn't have any of those things when she's sitting on the park bench at the end, and I don't think that that's necessarily just in the entertainment industry.
Your character kind of, always, when I was watching film, is always kind of tearing, crying. So how was, after the day finished and you came back to the hotel, so did you kind of, how did you recover? Are you good at the switch on and off really quick? And your character kind of has a distance from kids. So did you kind of try to kind of call your kids and kind of more, being yourself?
Yes. Well, my children were there with me, and then, as you know, they're not interested whether you're playing Jasmine French or Richard II. They just want you to do their homework and play with them and feed them, and I find that a great leveler. It means you have to switch off. And I loved San Francisco. I could live there in a heartbeat, but I was quite glad to leave, get my colour done and go to New York, because it was quite intense. But there was so much to do, so many lines to learn, so many situations to unravel, and so you just had to keep moving forward. But probably that's more a question my husband could answer than me.
I just want to point out this movie, which opens tomorrow. All of you are getting rave reviews for. Cate, I'm sure you're used to that. Andrew, one of my favorite reviews, you've been called a revelation, a scene stealer, and Rolling Stone called you shockingly effective. What's it like to get these raves?
It's really strange for me to hear any of that. I really am. I've been saying the same thing over and over, how that this has been one of the greatest experiences of my career, because acting is something I've always loved, and, to get a chance, to just work with these great actors and actresses and do scenes with them, it's really a dream come true. And, I haven't seen any of those quotes that you just said, but I'm hearing things, and I'm just absolutely grateful and thrilled that I was able to play off of such greatness. And, I've had a few conversations with Cate, and I said, look, I'm a fan of what you do. And I told her after the New York premiere, I said, but you went to this level, you topped everything. Because it is really difficult, to play a complete crazy person that she turned into in this movie. I could do it in reality, but to do it in front of a camera, piece by piece, yeah. No.
There's the secret.
Because it's just incredible to watch it. So, when I do my stand-up, you're the writer, director, producer, you're alone. But when you're working with other people, now I see when they do have things like the Academy Awards, like you were saying to her, and you hear actors up there saying, this actor or actress was so giving. Now I really understand what it means, because I never had that opportunity to do those things. And, I just thank them and Woody, and that's it. I was just hoping to do a really good job with it.
Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on a beautiful movie.
Thank you.
Thanks.